Hi, this is Tasheena,
And this is Jonathan.
and this is We Watch What We Watch, a podcast where a married couple just chat and talk about movies. Before we get into our movies today, got some least happy news on the box office side of things. Inside Out 2 is doing very, very well, like crushing all the records,
Yeah.
completely saving this summer season so far.
Yeah, I was really glad to see that.
Yeah, it's always nice when a movie that you just love also makes all the money. Like,
Yep.
I know in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter because art's art, but also it's just a little bit of a validation that like everybody else is also loving it and vibing with it. I don't know. I'm just really happy. I'm really glad this is the movie that's kind of breaking through this summer.
Yeah, especially with Despicable Me coming up and Garfield preceding it. It was also nice to see, like, have some faith in like general audiences. Like people will gravitate towards quality if it's there and it's appealing. I guess we'll see how Despicable Me does, but
I was just about to say that. Watch those little yellow balls make like $1
I'm sure
billion.
they'll. I'm sure they will. There's some people saying, "Oh, well, it's not getting that great reception." It's like, no, nobody cares. It's not a movie where anyone cares about reception. It's the movie you take your kids to have something to do.
Yeah, those movies always make a ton of money, which is fine. I'm just hoping it doesn't like stall out Inside Out 2.
Yeah, that was the only, that's. It's like I don't really care if it does well or not, but I just hope it doesn't cannibalize the run because it's doing so well.
I know, and it's like gonna be like number one in like a ton of different categories soon. I don't know, just happy to see it.
All right, so what are we talking about this week?
First movie that we're diving into today is A Quiet Place, Day One,
Yes,
um, which I don't think Jonathan knows much about the Quiet Place movies other than my rantings.
I know a bit. I mean, it's sort of one of those things that's just in the culture, in the discussion. You pick up, bits and pieces here and there. So yeah, I have not seen any movie in this series. I have my reasons, but just not my cup of tea.
You're not into monster movies,
It's not that I've seen monster movies.
or more like a the end of the world type feel to it. Because that's usually what I'm not into. I'm not big on like
Oh yeah,
end of the world, apocalyptic type movies, and that's definitely the feel of the movies. Is that humanity has definitely been brought down,
yes.
which is a bummer, but
Is it?
I
We had a good run.
oh,
Maybe
that's
it's time to
another
throw in the
podcast.
towel.
That's another podcast. um, but for this series of movies, I touch and go on monster movies. Some I enjoy, but it's not usually my favorite brand of horror. The first movie I think is really solid with a just one very flawed aspect of the narrative. Just the whole aspect of bring a baby in this world. Ooh, that's a rough one to kind of overcome. The second movie is like a direct sequel, pretty much like minutes after the first one. I don't remember a ton about the second movie. It was all I remember is the first movie after the whole COVID lockdown. It was the first movie I saw. So I might have a lot of positive associations just because I'm like, I'm back in the movies, baby.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if it was good or not. I just have positive associations with the movie.
Could any of those positive associations have to do with one Cillian Murphy?
You know what? Oh, it's not Cillian. It's Killian.
Killian,
First,
whoops.
get it right. Get it right. I mean, he was definitely a step up in terms of casting. It helped. Third movie is a prequel. It is based in New York City. on the day that these creatures arrive. And these monsters, the big thing is that they are blind, and so they hunt by sound. So I really like the monster design. The face is covered up almost like petals of a flower. They open up, you see the face, and on the side are these huge ear holes. So they hear very well, and when they open up, they hear very, very well. So I like the design. I thought that's a good concept for a monster, especially, I don't know, it's just when you see a monster, your first reaction is to scream, and that is the worst thing to do.
Yeah, that's probably the most genius part about this entire concept is, yeah, it's a monster, but it takes your base instincts and turns them against you.
Yes. And so the people that seem to have survived are the ones that are able to kind of have a control over those base instincts really quickly. And day one is very interesting. The first two movies were directed and written by John Krasinski.
Mm-hmm.
This prequel was directed by Michael Sarnowski, and both Michael and John, I believe, wrote the script, or at least definitely worked on the screenplay. I don't know like who wrote the actual line by line, because this was very different from the other two movies, but it had some parts that still had the same feeling as the first two
Mm-hmm.
movies. And then I'm like, oh, that was John. And then they have moments where I'm like, that was Michael.
And Michael, he directed Pig, right?
Yes. I'm going to be honest. I was kind of iffy on going to see this movie. I like the first two movies fine and well, but it's not like they're my favorites. And then a prequel, we've already talked about prequels with Furiosa, with
Yep.
like the trappings that come along with that and being kind of shoehorned in. I don't know, the previews like it looked exciting, but I'm like, what are they gonna do? Like the creatures are well designed, but I don't need mythos about them. I feel like they're pretty basic. It's not like I need any background on them. They're just aliens that came and they just do destruction.
One of the worst thing that can happen to a cool monster is it to be over-explained.
Exactly. So that was my concern. I'm like, oh no, we're gonna get a ton into like mythos and just do a ton of the same stuff we did in the first movies. Because we all already learned kind of two big things from the second movie. And one is very key in the prequel is that they do not swim, the monsters.
Oh.
So in the second movie, there is a group of people on an island, and that's how they're thriving and surviving, is because the creatures can't swim. And so they boated them from New York City out to, like, I guess, an island off of the coast of New York. I'm not sure. And that's where Henry comes in. He's in the second movie, and he is our only link in the prequel.
Oh, okay. So he's in both of them.
Yes. So in the second movie, he is the leader of the group on the island. And he mentions a little bit like, oh, I was in New York City. I was on one of the ferries that they boated people out, and we got here. And so he is in this movie, and I understand why, but it felt so ham-fisted. He didn't need to be there. That's the part that I feel like John Krasinski was like, but we need a tie-in. He was in New York City. This is what we need to do. Because he's in like the first act, but we kind of leave him behind pretty quickly, and it's for the better. I'm like, he doesn't really have a part here. It's a nice world building thing, but not really much in the narrative connection. He's
it's
just
one of those
there.
prequel trappings that we talked about is everything has to connect. It's like, does it? I don't think it does.
Exactly. So he's in it for a little bit in the beginning, and then he pops up at the very end. And that's it. And you know what? Like, I'm fine with that. We don't need any more of him. Because this movie is a really smaller scope movie.
Interesting. Even though it's smaller scope, even though I feel like it's bigger because it's the world's still there and you're showing the collapse of everything, but you're saying it's actually smaller scope than the other ones.
Oh, yes.
Interesting.
because, and I'm going to say this is mild spoilers, but this is all first act stuff. They just didn't have it in the trailers. Is that our leading lady, Sammy, is terminally ill. She is in hospice
Oh,
at
okay.
the very beginning. And that's why she has the cat, Frodo. Frodo is a therapy cat because she's in hospice.
Oh, interesting.
And she's kind of already given up on life. She's already said goodbye to New York City. This seems like a hospice place that's like probably like right outside the city because they take a bus trip in. And Alex Wolff, who is also in Pig, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to see Alex Wolff. He is her nurse. He's like one of the lead nurse of the hospice, and he convinces her to go to New York City because they're going to go see a show.
Oh boy.
And she's like, I already did this. Like, I said my goodbyes. Like, I don't need to do this. But he convinces her because she's like, well, can I get a slice of pizza? And he's like, okay, we'll get you some pizza. And you'll find out later in the movie, but she is like fixated on getting a slice of pizza. And so, what was really interesting about this movie is that it is from the perspective of someone who is already in their last days. So, her goals are different from someone who doesn't know when their time's up and who wants to live as long as they can. So, her journey is she is actually not going with the flow of people that are going towards the water to get on the boat. She's going to Harlem on her own journey because she wants to do something before she dies.
Wow.
And it's actually really moving.
See, this is where you get the crossover with Pig, because that Pig was fantastic. We loved Pig.
Oh, that is.
And this feels very much in that same vein.
Yes. For me, Pig is going to be one of my favorite movies of the decade. He's really good at getting these emotions to bubble up. Because I wasn't expecting to cry during
Quiet Place Day One.
Day One. That wasn't on my card, my bingo card for this movie, you know? And I'm like, by the end, I was crying. And I'm like, what is happening? And so she is joined by Eric, who deals with anxiety and having anxiety attacks. And that is the worst thing to have in the middle of this. Just two perspectives you usually don't get.
Right.
In this type of story, which I really appreciated.
What a great segue piece from Inside Out 2, by the way.
Exactly. And I'm like, oh, yes.
We're going on a theme here.
Let's see. Maybe this will be anxiety summer.
Oh, no. It's anxiety summer for a lot of other reasons, too.
Exactly. And so it is interesting after seeing Inside Out 2, then going and seeing this movie. Because something happens to Eric. And then it happens multiple times in the movie. And every time it happens, he has a panic attack. And it's like, what do you do? What do you do when you're faced with monsters and you're someone who has panic attack?
What's that meme? I guess I'll die.
I guess I'll die. Yeah, exactly. That would be me. So it's interesting the reaction that this movie's having. A lot of people are not liking this movie because of the expectations I think they had going into it. Like I said, that we're going to get background stuff, blah, blah. We know nothing else new about these monsters than from the first two movies. There's nothing new. And honestly, I am okay with that. I mean, everybody loves Frodo, the cat, and also seems to be on board with her journey. But like, I wish I could find the article. I saw it, and then of course I cannot find it again. There was a review, I believe it was from The Atlantic, of the movie, and they were calling this movie like sappy. They're like, this is a Hallmark movie. We get no answers. I'm like, really, dude? This is what you want? Answers? I don't give an F about answers.
Media literacy is dead.
I know, and this is The Atlantic, which I feel like should be at least somewhat a decent publication, and the fact that they're so upset. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I am a sap. Maybe I like sappy movies. I just like feeling something, you know? If a movie can get genuine emotion out of me, out of this dead heart, then
Yeah.
I'm all for it. And yeah, there were some things that didn't work. Like I said, there were some elements they were trying to ham fist in from the other movies. I'm just like, whatever. Maybe some narrative stuff that didn't completely work. But I was just on board for her journey, what she was going through, what this means for her, and also Eric, and also their friendship. Because I don't know, maybe if they had more time, it would be romantic, but there's no time for romance. So there's like this deep friendship that builds over like what, a couple of days. Like it's not long. And I found that interesting. I don't know. There's just a lot of elements I really liked in this movie. Maybe it is the Hallmark movie of monster monster flicks, but I
Honestly,
don't care.
this makes it sound way more appealing to me personally.
Yeah, I liked it. I think Michael Saranowski did a good job injecting some real emotion into a monster movie. Because the other monster movie that I really love is called The Host, by the same director who did like Parasite, Bong Joon-ho, I think his name
Hmm.
is. And it's a similar thing where, yeah, the monster stuff is good, but because of the family at the center and what they go through, and the ending especially, is devastating. That's what matters. Not the monsters, it's what these people are going through and how they handle it and the different perspectives on what happens when the world's ending. Literally, the world is ending, and different people are going to react differently because of their circumstances. What do we have left when the world is ending? That's the stuff that's interesting to me. And I thought this movie did a good job. And I'd probably see it again.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of the importance of the human element and the human story and telling a real, relatable, character-driven story. It's always been the difference between, say, the legendary monster movies, Godzilla series, and like the Toho series. At least with some of the latest ones, like Godzilla minus one, and how that tells such an effective character story. It's not just about the monsters. And that's definitely something that a lot of Hollywood movies have forgotten. And I think it's because they just write it off. Oh, it's a monster movie. They just want to see big dumb monsters punch each other. It's like, well, sure, but the rest of the story could be good too. You can have both.
I really think that's what Godzilla minus one proved. You can have both. Because I hear that a lot too. When, especially these newest Godzilla versus Kong, like these new movies that come out, I keep hearing, oh, well, the monster stuff is good, but the people stuff is not. And so you're just kind of waiting to get to the monster stuff. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound good to me. Why can't both be good?
Always immediately followed up with, well, what more do you want?
More do you
It's
want? I'm
just a
like,
monster movie. It's
a
like a
good
good movie.
movie? A good movie? Can I have both? Is that really too much to
Again,
ask?
like look at Toho. Like big and dumb monster fights is their specialty. There's some wacky there's some wacky shit in those. And yet they also have these compelling human stories. Like you can have both if you put any effort into it at all. That's all we're asking.
I think that's the lesson we have here. You can have
You
both.
can have both. You can actually have your cake and eat it too. Listen up, Hollywood. All right. So safe to say that's a recommendation.
Yes, I think just go in knowing this is not going to give you answers. It's not going to expand on mythos. If you like a smaller human story, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
All right. So for our next movie, Tasheena saw Maxxxine,
Maxine?
Triple X.
Yeah, triple X. Yeah, you can't forget that triple X in the title, capitalized. So Maxine.
Maxxine. You were really excited about this one.
Ugh, yeah. Oh boy. So this is even though this is a trilogy, this is a direct sequel to the first one, just X. By Ty West. He was the director and writer of all three movies. We'll skip over Pearl because that's just the background of the villain from the first one and has no bearing on the third movie. So the first movie group come together in Texas. They want to take advantage of the up and coming home market of VHSs. It's 1979 and they want to make a adult film. So they rent out this old barn from an old couple out in the middle of nowhere. They're going to make their little video and get big. And one of the people part of this group is Maxine. She's one of the actresses. The old couple turn out to be cray cray. Everybody dies but Maxine. So last we see Maxine, she is driving away from the slaughter. She does not wait for the cops. Nothing. She just pieces on out. Bye. It's not really a cliffhanger, but they do show that at the end of the first movie, the cops have the film, like the footage that they have of the adult film that they were
Mm-hmm.
putting together. So that means they do have Maxine on film. Because I wonder if she was thinking like, oh, they won't even know I was there. Just bye. So this movie takes place 5 years after X
Okay.
in Hollywood. So oh no, I'm sorry, 6 years because it's 1985. And in real life, this was towards the end of the Night Stalker run.
Oh, so this is a real serial killer.
So the Night Stalker is a real
Oh, okay.
person.
I thought it was someone that they made up for the.
Oh no, this guy was bad news. So Maxine been hitting the streets of Hollywood, hustling, taking all kinds of jobs in the adult industry. She goes to an open call for a horror movie and she lands a part. So she's at the moment where she's on her way to finally becoming the star she wants to be. Because that was her whole thing in the first movie, too. I want to be a star. Her motto is, I will not accept a life I do not deserve. So she wants to be a star. That is evident in the first movie, and it is in this movie as well. Pretty much, we know we don't get much else from the character.
Oh.
She was a part of an ensemble in the first one, so I thought since she's the focus of this movie, they would actually get an opportunity to develop more of her character, get to know more about her. Honestly, we don't. Like, she is still single-minded focused. I guess we get a little bit about how her viewpoint of life after experiencing this very traumatic thing that happened to her 6 years prior, where she's like, I saved myself. Other than that, we don't get much more. And that is probably the biggest problem of this film is there's a whole lot of nothing here.
Oh no.
So the first act, there was a few moments that I liked. So I'm like, okay, this is fine. Nothing great, but I love 80s slashers. I'm like, okay, I'll just enjoy the vibe at least. Then the second act was so boring and so many things didn't make sense. And I feel like there's so many moments that Ty West thinks he's like, I am saying something. I'm like, dude, you are serving up the coldest of takes, like stuff that has been in movies for decades. Especially about Hollywood. Oh, the real monsters, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah,
right.
We know this. There's nothing new. There's a lot of satanic panic in this movie because they're doing a horror movie. So they usually have like protesters outside. And it does tie into the villain, but in the most uninspired, wacky way. I was like, whatever. At least Mia Goth is really good. And she is. Like, this girl is carrying this movie on her little shoulders, like dragging it along. I'm like, she has given nothing. And I feel so bad for her. And then we get to the third act, which is probably one of the worst third acts I've ever seen.
Oh, that bad.
The villain is the goofiest cartoon villain ever. Like his motivations, everything. It is so bad. And then it just jumps the shark. Like everything about the third act just is wild. Not in a fun way either, where you're like, oh, wow, this is a good time. Like, no, I felt drained. I felt so tired. I was just like, can I go home? This is not fun anymore. And then all the characters in here are so one-dimensional, and it just breaks my heart. Because I was really excited for this. Like, I had mixed feelings about X. I thought it was a pretty good throwback. There's some elements I really liked. Pearl was pretty good, but also the same, pretty mixed. But because I love Mia Goth and I love 80s slashers, I don't know, just all this elements.
Purpose-built Tasheena movie.
I was really excited. And it was such a letdown for me. Oh boy. I'm wondering if we should go into spoilers.
Yeah, well, I don't have anything else to add to it, so I'd say, yeah, let's talk spoilers. So from here on
Okay.
out, if you are planning to see Maxine, best tune out. We're gonna go into spoiler territory.
Unless you are really Timmy Goff, I would say don't watch it. Or at least wait until you can rent it or watch it at home on streaming. So before we switch over to spoilers, I'm on Letterboxd like all annoying cinephiles. So of course, most of the Letterboxd reviews of this movie was just some version of Mia Goth, please step on my neck. That's what I'm saying. This is only for people that just love Mia Goth unapologetically. But there was a couple of gems in here. One was from Clark. Thought this was going to be kind of good, and it actually sucked bad. And then the second one is from Kit Laser, which is, I will not accept a third act I do not deserve. Print, put that on my wall. That is my motto for life now.
I like that.
Because I have to go back a little bit to X. So throughout X, and you think this is just more for like background ambiance, we keep hearing this local evangelists on like the radio, like fire and brimstone, porn's gonna take all our children away, it's gonna destroy America type evangelists in the background of X. And then towards the end, during all the climax, to try to drown out some noise, the old couple turns on the TV and that same pastor is on the television. And so at the end, when Maxine and Pearl are having their final duel, Maxine yells out the line, I will not accept a life I do not deserve. And at the exact same moment, the preacher on the television says the line word from word. The pastor is so like background noise, you don't even really register until he says the line exactly the same as her. Maxine kills Pearl, she gets in the car, paces out, and then when the cops are there, the preacher is still going on, and he's like, this cruel world took my daughter, Maxine, and he rips off like a sheet from a, looks like a funeral picture of his daughter, and it's a teenage Maxine. So the preacher you've been listening to throughout the whole movie in the background is her father.
Oh.
So we get to Maxine, and the very first sequence of the movie is old-timey black and white reel, and it's Maxine. She looks about 10 doing a tap dance, and she's like, Daddy, I'm gonna be like you, I'm gonna be famous, blah blah blah. And then they say the line together like, I will not accept the life I do not deserve. And he's like, say it like you mean it, girl. So that's our beginning, and I'm just, as soon as that came up, I'm like, oh no. There's that little bit in the back of my head.
Spidey senses.
Yeah, because the thing is, you can't just have a rando be the killer because they're targeting Maxine. Who would target Maxine? Because the 4 people that die are all 4 people that are in her life, like 2 of her coworkers, her friend, and the other star in the movie that she's going to be in. And they all have the satanic symbol on them. So he's like trying to make it look like it's somebody else. And Kevin Bacon plays a private detective that pretty much goes around.
Oh yeah, I forgot Kevin Bacon was in this.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon's in it, and he's pretty good. He has a wild accent, but he's doing something. Like Daniel Craig in the Knives Out movie. That's the vibe I got. He's doing something.
Bacon.
He's a private detective hired by the killer, and he's like partnered with the killer. They show a couple parts where the killer just got someone and then gets in his car.
So wait. So the private
crazy.
investigator is in cahoots with the killer?
Yes.
Oh. But no one else knows this. But the audience.
The audience knows it, and about halfway through the movie, Kevin Bacon and Maxine talk, and it's alluded to like whoever is responsible for the death of her 2 coworkers knows her secret because he got the police evidence video of her on the porno film and sent it to her. So like she knows that there's this person who knows her past, probably is the killer, and Kevin Bacon is a private detective who works for them. And he's like, this person has a lot of money, they're big time, you just need to meet them at this location. And then she spends a good act of the movie like not going, and a couple other people die, and then finally the third act is her going up to the house on the hills where her surprise, surprise father is there because her father, the preacher's the killer.
Oh,
Oh, so surprising. And if you guess who the killer is, it's not like it destroys the movie in any sense. There's movies where I've guessed who it is before and it's still a good movie. Oh my goodness. He goes full ham mode. It is so bad. So it just comes down to High West took all these better 80s movies, all this pop culture as dressing, but didn't do anything with it. It's just a mishmash of these culture things from that moment. And he doesn't have anything to say. Nothing is resolved in a satisfactory way. Also, it is a bad slasher movie. There's only one person that dies on camera. The other three people, it is off camera. They just find their bodies.
oh, that's boring. So what happens in the third act?
Oh my goodness. And his whole plan is that he's like, we're going to use film for the glory of God. And we're going to tape Maxine repenting of her sins under duress, pretty much, is going to be like, yeah, I'm Christian now. Then the film industry will actually be used for good. Like, what about all those people you killed? And he does mention, like, oh, I gave them all an opportunity to. I told them, repent. And they didn't. So I killed them. He has the branding stick, and I think he's about to brand Maxine when the cops come in and they have the guns. And then all of a sudden, like, they have like 5 cameras. They're all filming this on the side of a pool. One by one, they just start taking out shotguns and they start blowing things up, and the cops are shooting them. It's so weird for an 80s slasher film. There's one scene of a slashing, and then the rest, the end is a complete shootout. And then, more spoilers, she kills her dad at the end. And she's like, sorry, daddy, I'm not going to forgive you for doing this. I'm going to be a star. Ned.
At least she has brand consistency.
And then I know. And then the end is she's in the horror movie. And because her dad killed the leading lady, she's now the leading lady, which might have been in a more interesting movie. Like, everything worked out for Maxine. Nobody had any questions about that. Her daddy killed the lead. And Elizabeth Debicki's like, awesome job. Let's get to making our horror movie. And I'm just like, what? What an awful way to end this trilogy. And now Ty West, I saw the other day. He's like, oh, well, I'm thinking of a 4th installment. And I'm like, wait, what? What? He's like, it just depends upon what happens with Maxine. If it does well, the box office, then maybe I'll do a 4th movie. And I'm like, no, don't threaten me, please. Stop. Just let it end. Let Mia Goth go and do something else. Release her. No, and then I looked at the box office today, and Maxine's already making double what the other 2 movies made, and I'm
Oh,
like,
really?
oh no, we're gonna get a 4th movie, which I will not be saying because with all its problems, I gave him the benefit of the doubt for X and Pearl, but this was awful. I know I shit on this movie a lot, but I'll leave with 2 things, 2 positives I want to say, so I'm not just completely negative.
Go for it.
1, Giancarlo Esposito is in this.
Hmm.
And he usually plays, the stoic bad guy. Gus from Breaking Bad was his breaking role. And he's just pretty much been playing that character over and over and over.
Yep.
And in this, he plays her agent, and he's having a good time. And I'm like, you know what? Let this man play some more fun roles. He's doing great. I liked him in this. He was enjoyable. So I hope he gets the opportunity to play different roles because he's a good actor, but he keeps getting typecast in the same role over and over. That was nice to see. And also, there's one scene towards the beginning where Maxine has a real awesome bad bitch moment that I was here for. But there's a scene where she's going down a dark alleyway because it's right next to her apartment, but someone chained the fence. So she's like stuck, and there's a guy following her, and he comes out and he has a knife. And as he's starting to come closer to her, and she pulls out the small gun, and this guy starts crying and freaking out. And she's like, what were you going to do? He's like, "Oh, I wasn't gonna hurt you." She's like, "Uh-huh, really? You weren't gonna hurt me?" And she makes him strip down naked, get on the dirty alleyway floor, and with her high heels, she steps on his balls, like,
Ooh.
crushed them. They ain't no use to nobody.
Ooh.
And I was like, that's what she should have been this whole movie. Because we then only kind of see glimmers of that throughout. Because her whole thing is, I survived something horrific. I'm never letting that happen to me again. I can save myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that scene really kind of encompassed that internal strength, but also how problematic it is because, a couple of her friends die and the police are questioning her and they're like, doesn't that mean anything to you that your friends are here? And she's like, yeah, but it's not me. Like, I saved myself. Maybe they should have too.
Damn.
Exactly. So there is like it's both a positive and a negative
Right.
because she's victim blaming. Like it's not their fault they died. And I thought that would be interesting. I thought that'd be good theme to really hone in on was like strength is good, but what happens when you are so self-sufficient, have so much strength and independence that you kind of look down on people who you deem as not having the same inner strength as you, and so they deserve what comes to them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it connects to their actual third act at all.
Yeah, because she only gets out because the police just happened to follow her and save her ass. Like, probably would have been branded and probably killed at the end if the police weren't there. And instead of it being a learning moment of like, oh, sometimes fucked up things just happen. It doesn't matter how strong you are, that she could have had a real moment there. Like I said, nothing is done in a satisfactory way here. This is nothing in the visuals, nothing in the story. Just, I couldn't believe what a dead end this movie ended up being.
It's really interesting looking back on it. Coming into this week, the one you were most excited about was definitely Maxxine, and the one you were very much nervous about was Quiet Place Day One. Tried watching the first Quiet Place, and you couldn't get through it again. And you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
I'm Jonathan, I'm really worried about Quiet Place. Maybe I should review something else. And just to see the complete reversal
Oh my gosh.
that has happened is sometimes
Yeah.
you can still be surprised.
Yeah, but that's probably the biggest takeaway from this episode is that 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have expected this at all. Like, my expectations going into both these movies were so different from where I ended up. And that's also a good reminder about expectations. Like, they are powerful, but you want to try your best to not let expectations ruin the experience for you. And I'm trying so hard to keep that in mind with Long Legs coming out next week, which we're gonna talk about in our next episode because people are hyping it so much on social media. So I saw someone say, unless the serial killer comes out of the screen and like stabs me, I don't know how this movie is gonna live up to the hype that's going on. And that's how I feel like. I'm like, how? There's no way. There's no way. So I've just been trying to ignore as much as I can with Long Legs, keep the expectations at a mid, like I expect a good movie. And hopefully it's better than that. But if not, that's fine. I don't know. Every time somebody the general audience hypes up like a horror movie, I usually end up getting disappointed. That's what we have to look forward to the next episode.
All right. Any parting thoughts?
Ugh, I mean, I guess go see Maxine at your own risk. Definitely think Quiet Place Day One. Probably a better bang for your buck. But it's a movie where it's also disappointed people because it's not what they wanted. So you really have to go into that movie knowing what it is. Yeah, I think that's the lesson for both these movies.
Expectations.
Just expectations. If you want to go see Maxine after this, fine. Just keep those expectations low and maybe you'll have a good time. There's a lot of people that love it. I've seen a lot of 4 and 5 stars on Letterboxd for this movie, but I'm not alone. There's also a lot of people who are like, what was that third act? All right. So, yep. I think I'm done talking about both for the moment. Leave Maxine behind, especially.
Yeah, in 2 weeks we'll have, is that Twisters and Longlegs?
Yes, so it will just be me saying long legs,
Yep, and we'll both see
and
Twisters.
and then us and our daughter.
Yeah, our daughter was interested in, is really fascinated with tornadoes for some reason, so she'll be watching
She's really
Twisters.
excited to see
So we'll
Twisters.
see how that goes.
That was a huge surprise to me, but she's gonna come with us, so we'll see how that goes.
All right.
All right, we'll talk to you then.
See ya.
Bye.